Okay, this is the first time I'm trying to record a voiceover for a video that I'm making, so it might sound choppy, it might sound bad. Also, my throat is kind of sore, so it's not gonna sound fantastic. But today I'm going to be tier ranking the 22, 23 books I read in 2025. My goal was 25, but I just didn't make it. Fantastic, which is the top tier, is going to be for anything that I think everyone will enjoy. Personal 5 stars is anything that I think is just my taste that I don't really know if anyone else will love. Okay means it's decent, it's inoffensive. Forgettable means I actually just don't enjoy it much, I don't remember it. And terrible means it's terrible. So Pen Pal is fantastic. Pen Pal, I listened to Creepcast read it, and it was really good. The ending is heart wrenching, so I actually don't want to spoil it for you. But it's about this little boy that gets a pen pal who kind of becomes obsessed with him, and that's literally all I want. Secondly is Baroska, which I would also put in fantastic, but it's something that I think would need trigger warnings. The ending is quite intense, but for Baroska to stay in fantastic, it would need to be ignoring Baroska Part 5. That has not happened because Baroska Part 5 is terrible. But the rest of the story is heart-wrenching, it is upsetting, it's also one of those things I'm not going to tell you what it's about because it is tough. But it is really worth the listen. I once again listened to it on Creepcast, shout out. But besides that, I think it is worth a listen. But next is The Wolf King. This I got on Kindle Unlimited for free, and I would have put it in personal 5 stars if it were earlier this year, but I'll put it in okay, because it is a alpha shifting werewolf romance, right? And it was not bad, it was enjoyable, but it got to the point where I wasn't really in the mood to read the second book, and I don't know, I think I've grown out of the werewolf shifting genre. As you'll see, there's like another two on here that were just, you'll see where they're rated. But yeah, not great. I think Check and Mate by Ali Hazelwood would also go in forgettable. It wasn't bad, it was also completely inoffensive, but as most of Ali Hazelwood's books are. But it was also YA, which I wasn't expecting because I didn't read properly, but it was okay. And I didn't jive with it that much. The characters were boring. The stakes are minimal. If you've ever read an Ali Hazelwood book, you know it always just ends up perfectly fine. You know? Heated Rivalry. I want to say something. Is I read this before the TV show was announced. So anyway, Heated Rivalry goes in forgettable. I gave it 3 stars, and I think I should honestly move it down to a 2. And my complete review was uneventful smut book. I don't like how the conflict is resolved at the end. I don't think the characters are that engaging. I don't know. It was just not fantastic. 100% Match is quite different from the romances we've read. I would put it in okay. It was gross to be gross. That's kind of its whole shtick. It's 100 pages or so, and it's just gross, you know? And it wasn't bad, but I think it played too much on shock value in order to be a good read, rather than actually being something with a message and something that is shocking in order to have a resolution and an answer. I think it was quite fun for the first maybe 60 pages, and I got to a point where I was like, I actually don't care about what's happening, and I don't care about any of the conflict that you're telling me about because there is no conflict. This guy's just weird. Okay, Never Will I Ever by C.E. Rissy is a romance book. I will put it in personal 5 stars because it was very fun and it was heartbreaking towards the end. It's like C.E. Rissy is very good at making enjoyable characters so that when the inevitable conflict arises, it actually does affect you. But I don't think everyone would be like, oh, this is 5 stars, this is amazing, because it's just a gay romance book. It was just that I was at that point in my life, I was like, I want to read romance. And C.E. Rissy was the one who was putting out the stuff that I wanted to read. Same with Don't You Dare. Don't You Dare is probably my favorite book ever. The romance is really fun. The characters are really likable. and the conflict towards the end is resolved in a way that doesn't feel silly. It feels realistic. And I really enjoyed the characters. So that is personally more of a self-comfort book, less than it is something that I'm like, everyone is going to love this. Iced Out, I picked up because of Heated Rivalry and Never Will I Ever. But I honestly think I'll put it in Forgettable because the love interests were not as engaging as the others in these two novels. And they were not that interesting. The conflict was a bit ridiculous, and I don't know how I would have forgiven the person in the story if that had happened to me. It was just also very big on misunderstanding, and I was like, it gets to a point. I can have one or two misunderstandings within a novel to bring the narrative forward, but if we're having just misunderstanding as our main issue between the characters, it is just kind of ridiculous, which is what I will say about Riven, which I'm putting in terrible. Riven was the last book I read of 2025, and the full story of why I picked up Riven was because I searched angsty gay romance on Reddit, and I got given Rend, which is the second book in the series. So I was like, okay, I have to read both of them. The first book follows like this guy who's a drug addict and this other guy who's like a young pop star, and they fall in love, but there's like a 10-15 year age gap, and wow, they're in love, but I was just not rooting for them at all. And there were so many misunderstandings in this book. It literally felt like no one knew how to communicate with each other. The main character is like, oh, I want to continue doing music, but I actually hate my musician friends. And the other guy's like, don't quit music. He's like, I'm going to quit music, but I don't want to quit music. Oh, but you hate me, but I don't hate you, but I'm in love with you, but I actually don't love you. That's what it felt like to read the book. And it was just a terrible reading experience. It was uninteresting. It was unmotivated, and it was not, the characters didn't have enough depth for me to feel like, oh, I understand why you're making all of these decisions. Especially with the drug abuse of one of the characters, it felt quite undermined sometimes and just been played there so the character would have a vulnerability. That was just my opinion though. Love Me Whole, I would have actually put it in fantastic, but it's also one of those things where it's a romance, so it's quite a tumultuous thing. I'd put it in okay. It's a romance book about a man that has DID who falls in love with a man who does not, and you get to interact with the different alters within the book and see how our main character like works out this romance with this guy who is, I think he has 6 alters, and I feel like the alters are actually all quite fleshed out, and it's a really interesting book. And I got to a few points where I was tearing up, and I had a friend who has DID who read it, and she was like, this is actually pretty solid. So that is just my criteria for ranking this. I enjoyed it. I think it was good. I'm a big angst person, and this definitely had what I was looking for. But I don't think it's something that I could be like, everyone's going to love this. It's okay, Then Mate by Ellie Hazelwood. Okay, I have a lot to say about this. Terrible. And this hurts to do because I've read a lot of Ellie Hazelwood, and I've liked all of them. They're inoffensive, smutty romance books. But Mate, I read Bride I think it was last 2 years ago now that it came out. And Bride was really fun. It was a really fun reading experience. It was exciting. The characters were interesting. Misery was fun. And then she drops Mate. And Mate, I think, is the worst book I've read of hers. It felt like, once again, I'm just going to put out another werewolf romance because the last one did so well. And I get it, that is how it works. But this was just not inspired at all. The characters did not seem that into each other. Serena was an uninteresting character to follow. And a lot of the issues within the book was just misunderstanding again, which you know how I feel about that. Snuff by Chuck, the guy whose surname I can't say. Fantastic. But also, I know it's not supposed to be up there, but I'm going to put up there. I'll put it, it's like, realistically, I can't put it in the middle, but it's here. But Snuff is about a woman, similar to Bonnie Blue, where it's like, I'm going to sleep with 100 men in order to beat the world record. And this woman goes through this thing, and she knows that she might die in this situation. And you kind of get to know all the characters that are going into the situation and their backstories and their reasons for being there. You've got a character that's like a white knight that wants to save her. Then you have one that wants to betray her because they used to work together. Then you have one who's actually just a gay model that wants to come back into the livelihood, right? But this is not for everyone. It is not at all for everyone, but it is campy, it is shocking, I thought it was fun, but I can definitely see where the writing is like, this is not fun, because there's quite a few descriptive paragraphs where it's describing like pornographic versions of films, but with different names. I can't say them because it will get me demonetized. But I thought it was campy. I thought it was funny. I thought it was shocking, and the ending was like, what is happening? But yeah, I think it was fantastic. I gave it 5 stars, but the overall ratings are sitting at like a 3.2. So it's just probably just me. This Woven Kingdom was okay. I enjoyed it, but I think it's one of those books where, similar to Shatter Me, it's you read the first one and it's not that interesting because it's a lot of world building. I struggled because this was my first fantasy book, and I'm not a big fantasy person at all. So getting used to the kingdom names and the characters and the, like, do we have dragons in this world or do we not have dragons? Do we have powers or are we just normal? It was a lot of that. I was not sure where I was actually going, what I was doing. But I kind of picked it up towards the end, but I think I need the second novel to actually really get there. But I own all 3 besides the newest one, which is the 4th one. But I don't know. It was good. It was good. I'm not saying it was bad, but it was not 100% for me because I'm not a fantasy reader yet. But I'm trying to grow my ventures this year. So we'll see. Okay, so then we have the 2 Uketsu novels, Strange Pictures and Strange Houses. I'll put these both in. I should have had another one which is like decent or fun, because these 2 aren't personal 5 stars in there, but they're also not just okay. They were really fun. I got through them both in a day, both of them in a day, and they're like 300 pages. Strange Pictures was really fun. It was a bit difficult to follow at times because some of the characters had very similar Japanese names, so I was kind of struggling to follow who was who, but that might just be a me issue. I really enjoyed the physical, like the drawings that you actually got to see. At times it was a little weird, it felt stretched. Same with Strange Houses, the plot was a bit strange, but it was really fun. I enjoyed them, especially Strange Houses, because I want to study interior design, so a floor plan horror was really up my alley. I would recommend these to people, but I don't know. It's in between these 3. I would recommend them to people, but I wouldn't say this is going to be like a life-changing novel. It's just really enjoyable to read, especially if you need something fast, almost like a Frida McFadden book to get you out of a slump. These are kind of pick-me-up books. Then we have Pack Challenge, which I got at a secondhand store, and it was terrible. I've made a whole video about it, how the writing is terrible, how the author just like shows women in a terrible way. The plot is uninteresting and the smut is weird. It was not for me, but I wanted to read it because it was one of my Her Kid challenges. But no, I would not recommend this to my worst enemy, I don't think. The White Tiger, I put in fantastic. The White Tiger I read for school as my set work novel this year. And it's one of those books where you'd expect to be ad nauseum about it. You kind of hate talking about it because you've read it so many times and you've had to discuss it for exams. But I really enjoyed it. I think Balaram is a very interesting character. I think the story is campy, but it's also shocking. And it's commentating on something that is really prevalent that we don't think about too much and we don't really discuss. And there's so many questions that we can go into about the White Tiger, about, is he an anti-hero? Is he a villain? Is he a product of his environment? The characters are really interesting, and it kept me turning pages, which is something I kind of do struggle with, is getting to finish a book quickly. But the White Tiger was really, really good. The Fake Mate, terrible. This was another one of those cheap cash grabs because werewolf romance is kind of popping off recently. It was so boring. The characters were so uninteresting. And there's a scene where the main character there's a scene where the main character goes into heat and calls her doctor boyfriend from work to help her out. Yeah. I don't know. I think this year was just not my year for werewolf romance. I've also think I've burnt out of it a bit because I've been reading Omegaverse and stuff like that since I was 12 on Wattpad. So I've kind of know what I like, and none of these were that good. Hostile. Hostile was another romance that I read, and this was just also terrible. The whole basis for this novel is the one character's got a lot of trauma. He's very hostile. He's almost like a hurt puppy, and we need this romance to bring him out of his shell, to bring him to be more comfortable in life. No, this guy was not hostile at all. He literally had every reason to be angry, and the characters were so forgettable. I actually don't remember the name of any of them, so it's in between both of these, but leaning towards here. Don't read it. It had been on my TBR for like 3 years, and I found it on Kindle Unlimited, and it was just so bad. The Metamorphosis obviously goes in fantastic. Everyone loves the Metamorphosis. I'm generalizing crazy there, but I really enjoyed it. But I have a running argument with my boyfriend about whether or not he is a human-sized cockroach or a cockroach-sized cockroach. I'd like to believe he's a human-sized cockroach because it is a lot scarier to visualize that. I think the story of isolation and being rejected by your family once you're not helpful anymore, and the analogy that it is for disability, or at least that's how we read it, is really impactful. And then the whole story with the sister at the end as she goes through her own metamorphosis and growing up it's really fun. This was a really good classic, and it's something that is quite easy to pick up. The writing isn't all fancy Dante's Inferno-esque. It's readable. It's very easily readable, and it's something that I would recommend to everyone. Then lastly, we've got O Sacred Dark. O Sacred Dark is a romance again that kind of has almost an ABO system where characters are, there's like an alpha, but it's a dom. So it's weird, but it was actually it was quite sad and quite fun, very angsty. I'm a big angst person, so but this is the comprehensive tier list of my top 25 books I read last year, 23 something. And yeah, I'm hoping this year is a bit more explorative, and I read a bit more horror, a bit more thriller, not just gay romance and Omegaverse romance, which I'm no longer that big of a fan of. But yeah, just stay tuned. I'm going to be trying to upload much more often this year and really try and make something out of this. So no promises, but I will try my best. Thank you for watching.